Is it too early to look back?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So we figured, yeah, why not take a look back? Because truth of the matter, the production of the Dan York State of Mind program comes to a grinding halt. Tomorrow will be our last original scheduled broadcast for 2018. You'll see a handful of shows Wednesday through the holiday week from programs earlier in the year. We're all going to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back on a nightly basis, of course, right after the holiday. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to have you aboard. So why not bring some of the best journalists in town in and just talk about some of the stuff that's going on. McGowan's making trouble. Wait till you hear the column he just put out today. Oh, my goodness. And the Public's Radio, Donnis, good friend of the show, and Red Sox. Not, he's crazy, the Red Sox. And from about 12 years ago, I still owe him dinner, and I've never forgotten.
As long as you just reminded.
Well, as long as someone doesn't forget, right? Okay. So let's just start, right? Here's a headline. I don't know. I'm not big in ranking the top stories of 2018. Let's just blow through them, and it's a random list. Obviously, that is the Paw Sox heading out of town. And you remember Larry Lucchino, what he had to say.
If my mother were still alive, this is the advice she would give me. Larry, why don't you take your team where it's wanted, where they really very much support you and want to have this ballpark done? Go where you're wanted, not where there's controversy and disagreement and opposition.
But that hurt, that one. I mean, I every time I see him say that, I feel his pain, and I feel the pain of the loss of a story. Dan McGowan, Donnis, guys, thanks. Do you feel the same way when you see that, or do you have different thoughts?
Well, the thing that strikes me is how little hangover there's been from this decision by the Paw Sox to leave. I mean, yeah, people like us are kind of sad about it. We're sports fans. We like the presence of a team like that. But there really hasn't been a huge outcry, and it seems like in a political way, House Speaker Nicholas Mattiello played this smartly. His voters aligned with him on this issue. And could the Paw Sox have been kept here for the state Senate deal? Probably, but that didn't fly in the House, and Worcester offered them a ton more money.
I forget that when I bring Donnis on, he always kind of, you can leave.
I'm out.
Just feel free to leave, because he and I are going to take a half hour to beat this one out.
I'd like to referee it, actually. No, so my take on this
You
is,
buy that?
I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that when you hear Larry Lucchino, kind of twist the knife a little bit with talking about sort of all the factors that led to them going to Worcester and them being embraced in Worcester, I don't think that's ever a good message to anyone who wants to build or do things in Rhode Island. It's certainly concerning.
All right, okay. Look, it's not like everyone was going to go, right, and jump off buildings. 38 studios is the ankle bone, connected to the shin bone, connected to the knee bone, connected to so it starts this cancer of malaise and economic distrust and political distrust amongst the electorate, right? And so we get into this whole thing, and you get various public polls that said, you know what, do you want public money to keep the Paw Sox? No. But when you said to them, hey, by the way, do you know public money is involved in the Paw Sox? Would you like the same deal? The answer was yes. Right. And so an uninformed electorate piles it rent away. But for us to suggest that the pain and the devastation of this decision has been minimal is to suggest that it hasn't even started yet.
Well, there hasn't even been pain yet, right? That's the thing.
But first of all, they're going to play out 2 years in front of half a crowd, right? And so that'll be something that they have to deal with. Right. They don't have as much money to put up in Worcester, so they are going to park the money that they were going to put up here and suffer the losses for 2 years when no one's buying hot dogs. But Hasbro is a perfect example, don't you think? If Hasbro, they were the leading candidate to be the signator on that stadium, and they would have moved their life science, blah, 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 blah. So now we're in a situation where Hasbro's jerking everybody around about whether they're going to stick around, and there's nothing in Pawtucket for them, and then there's the next thing, and then there's the next thing, and the trust in public-private partnership has been completely destroyed. And so I'm not sure what you mean by that, brother.
Yeah, no, you make some good points, Dan, and I thought your analysis when the Paw Sox issue was playing out over the summer was spot on, that the way it was framed for voters was really important, and there was some, not the best language was being used to describe it in some quarters. But you make a great point in terms of Hasbro, because it seems like there might be a dim chance for Hasbro to remain in Pawtucket, a better chance for them to stay in Rhode Island. You know, they might go somewhere else. But yeah, I mean, you are lining up the dominoes, and I think you make a good argument there.
I don't think everyone jumped off bridges over 38 either. But the residual has been, and we don't need Here, the Superman building sits empty. Post 38 malaise. Does anybody think that the Superman building in Providence will be, and you cover Providence as well or better than anybody, Danny, do you think that the Superman building is going to survive without a public-private partnership?
No chance.
Not a chance.
Right.
And the political temperature for that is what?
Zero.
Zero.
But that's also due to how that's kind of an obsolete building, and it would take a ton of money to bring it up to...
A ton of money to tear it down.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Yeah.
Ton of money to tear it down, triple ton of money to rehab it.
Right. And there's nothing you can do with. I mean, the building, unless you get a public-private kind of deal done, that building will sit there for a long time.
Yeah. So I think this Paw Sox thing, I think, is part of a thing. You know, I don't hearken back to behind closed door politics. I mean, nobody wants to see that. You guys fight for transparency all the time, and that's a good thing. But you've been around a while, and Dan, you're a great student of history in the city. You have to be the journalist that you are.
Very young too.
Yeah, and very young, very young. Not a big animal guy. I just found out. Wait till you hear about that one. And a good baseball coach too. But have you noticed that in the last 3, 4, 5 years, elected officials seem less confident about the things they believe in, or maybe they don't? In the old days, there were some behind-the-scenes, star chamber type of decisions that were made that at least they were made.
Use the deceased now former owner of the Paw Sox, right? James Skeffington was a guy who
thought he had it wired, by the way.
Right, and a guy who got things done behind the scenes in Rhode Island for a very, very long time. I think he lived in a world where he thought he could just kind of cook up a deal behind the scenes, and he did not in any way correctly estimate the anger from 38 Studios, really. They're calling it 38 Stadium for a while, right? And so...
Yeah, but I'm not sure, and this is tragic, conjecture is tragic here because he passed away suddenly. I'm not sure that deal wouldn't have got done over everyone's figurative dead body anyway. That's my point.
I would answer your point this way. I mean, I think it's a lot easier to stage a revolution, so to speak, than to run a government. So there were a lot of questions about Governor Raimondo's ability to win re-election. Turns out she cleaned Matt Brown's clock, she cleaned Alan Fung's clock, but we have the same kind of tough issues that have been lagging on in Rhode Island forever. Underperforming public schools, troubled state agencies under the aegis of the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. And I think you're right. I think people like Gina Raimondo have an easier time running a campaign and winning than getting at the root of some of the tough issues.
Well, since you brought it up, Kev, could you pop that picture up there of the election result going into, kind of morphing into a second story? I don't put that up as the top. Again, I'm not ranking them necessarily, but ho hum, right? Ho hum. At the end of the day, a lot of hullabaloo about nothing in terms of the results of the election.
Right, and there were, AP put a story out over the summer where, Raimondo should be cruising. She faces a really tough re-election, but that turned out not to be the case. She won both the primary and the general election by about 15 points, very decisive victories. Her campaign was like a machine. She had a ton of money, which is the fuel that campaigns run on. And so, yeah, she is good at winning elections.
Yeah, when you're able to spend a bunch of money, literally never get off of television from the summer on, that obviously really helped. But you're right. I mean, across the country, there were stories, is the governor vulnerable? The AP did a big one. I think Governing Magazine did a big one on how, Governor Raimondo appeared to be. We thought, by the way, On primary night even, we thought there was a real chance, because people were nervous and no one had seen any exit polling, that there was a chance that Matt Brown would get close. Blows him out. Alan Fung never felt like he really caught steam after kind of a strange primary and sort of strange strategy that he took. And the governor's good at winning elections. That's exactly right.
Well, the politics is interesting. Sometimes people stand for things, sometimes people do things, sometimes people do both. But I don't see a lot of elected officials that stand for something or just believe in things and behave like Pied Pipers. Paw Sox, you had 4 players in government that just watched it fall down right between them. Harwood never would let that happen in the old days.
Well, help cities from Pawtucket.
Well, true, but things that were going to get done a little. I don't want to reminisce necessarily about some of the old days, but some of the old days built. Cianci wouldn't let that get done. Things wouldn't.
Cianci would have swooped in and stole it, put it in Providence. Let's be honest.
Right? But I just don't know. And in this election season, she wins blowing away because the draft of all of what you said, organization and money, just kind of left a listless set of opponents who didn't. Nobody went to the poll thinking that they knew what these guys stood for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things.
No, it's a popularity contest.
One of the things that I was actually surprised, I wasn't surprised by it, but it was notable. If you flash back 4 years ago, 2014, mayor's race and the governor's race, I mean, the number of stories we were doing on policy proposals, right? Because it was an open seat for governor, it was an open seat for mayor. You had a story a day, or at least a story every other day, about I'm going to do this on education, I'm going to do this on public safety. This time around, there were no policy proposals. I mean, a handful of press conferences here and there, but it never happened. It was a popularity contest.
It was either like, Cranston's the worst place ever, or Raimundo's Rhode Island is the worst place ever. It was this ridiculous hyperbole.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll tick off a couple more key things when we come back. Stay with us. And this is some of Ian's work on the public's radio. The divide in the General Assembly, you guys think is kind of an interesting conversation, and certainly it is. Nick Mattiello had as a Speaker of the House, really thread the needle this time around, right?
Yeah, but he wound up having a bigger victory by quite a bit than in 2016.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with some of the Democratic wave. And local politicians forget that national elections have a wind force.
Absolutely.
Right? But Steve Frias, the Republican, came in and gave Mattiello a certain run for his money anyway. I mean, but he's got this problem now, which is he's got a very more liberal contingency that is not now afraid to say, you know what, we don't like you, or we don't like what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's going to make this House session more interesting because we don't have an effective two-party system in Rhode Island. The Republicans only have, I believe, 9 members in the new House session. So this alternative bloc of Democrats who oppose Mattiello is effectively the opposition. And they could make things more interesting.
And the big question, of course, is you can really screw up the budget if you don't have enough votes, right? And was it 50 votes that you need to pass a budget? And so if there's enough kind of angst from the liberals who are against him, plus the 9 Republicans, potentially you team up and you cause some real problems.
Well, yeah, I mean that's classic Rhode Island, right? We're going to have people who are on the polar opposite ideological scale, possibly teaming up for power plays and the like, which, I don't know, will only go to confuse the general public even more, I think. And I don't know that that's going to be exciting for the voters, constituents.
It'll be exciting for us. It's not going to be
exciting for us. But, I mean, it's just, in terms of productivity, I don't know.
That's right.
And in the absence of a more robust Republican Party, that might be as good as it gets for there being some opposition.
Well, is opposition going to be there for the sake of opposition? I mean, look, for the most part, I think Mattiello was embarrassing. You say he was effective. I think he was completely ineffective. I mean, having the Paw Sox go, you said he was effective.
I said
effective on that one. I think he's been overall effective, but that was a dropped ball.
The way he handled it was the way his constituents wanted him to. So it was politically effective for him.
Well, how do you determine that?
Because
I don't think his constituents gave a rat's patooey about the stadium in Cranston District 15. Why? I think that was a complete made-up farce.
I mean, it was certainly an
There was
issue
nothing
in
in
the
polling data that said that they were really concerned about it.
He seemed to, though, point at polling data that
I think he made it
never
up.
seen.
There was a Channel 12 poll that did reflect what Mattiello was saying in terms of how the voters were regarding the issue.
There was. You're right. There was polling. Yeah, not in the district necessarily, but statewide.
See, this
polling,
is the
that's right.
thing. When asked, I think what Mattiello did is he created the myth of a problem that he could resolve by trying to thread the needle again. And at the end, guess what happened? Paw Sox left.
Right.
So if anybody's going to tell me that was effective leadership, I don't know. Overall, though, I think he's been a fairly competent Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
And now he's going to be in quite the tussle, right?
Yeah.
What are those people going to bring to the table that ought to concern or energize the voters?
I think one thing that could energize voters is the effort to make the legislative process more open and not have it be such a top-down process, to maybe address some of the long-standing complaints about how a ton of legislation gets passed in the last week or two of session, to give committee members more control over the flow of legislation. These are good issues for public debate. I'm not optimistic that a lot will change, but these are issues that should be talked about.
Well, the big question is going to be whether or not you get into a conversation about process that is probably needed and would be good, or do you get the progressives who say, let's raise the minimum wage up through the roof, let's do all these things that are going to, that we believe in, but maybe not necessarily has a lot of support statewide.
Well, I have found that process debates fall flat for the voters. They don't really,
no one's voting you over. Voting
the
out
citizens
over
just kind of go,
public
yeah, let me
record.
know when something gets done or decided upon. In Providence, a headline here on Hope Tower. Now, this is recent, obviously, but this is still a big story for the year. And even this week, the final touches on this decision will be made. Correct?
Wednesday, there'll be a vote from the 195 Commission, or at least it's on the agenda to finalize the purchase agreement for the tower.
Guy comes in, got $300 million, says he wants to spend it. Mayor Lorza vetoed the zoning change, had his veto overridden, and then on override night decided to argue that this thing will fall down on its economic patooey. Never made that argument during the process. What was that all about?
Yeah, he never made the argument at all. I mean, he was consistent. He was even out of touch, and out of touch is maybe not the right word, but he was out of step with the other critics of the proposal. Remember, he was fine with the height of the tower. He didn't like the design, and he wanted final control over the design. When it became clear that the city council was going to override his veto, he had a little bit of egg on his face, and that's when he kind of came out with the, I'm going to, I think this project is not financially
unique
viable.
approach, huh? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, what up with that?
It seemed in part the mayor was playing to his constituents on the east side who had a lot of objections when it was looking like the legislature might intercede and exert its influence. But at the same time, that is going to make life more difficult on Smith Hill for Mayor Elorza when he's trying to get.
He's got a huge problem there.
Yeah.
He's got a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, he already had a huge problem. He's never been well received up there, in part for some of the same reasons that people really like him in Providence. He is what he is. He doesn't like to cut deals behind the scenes. He's not a big fundraiser type of guy. He doesn't go out with the other elected officials. That's one of the reasons that endears him to people. But he at the same time, he's never had great relationships. And now, you went up and you really didn't just oppose the tower. You vetoed it. You put out a nasty statement afterwards. So that's a slap in the face to one of his only allies, which is the Senate side.
You asked a brilliant question of him last week, Danny, when you said, aren't you kind of chafing this thing, a la 38 Studios? If the sitting mayor is going to dump on this project continually, it hurts its chance for eventual success.
It does. And by the way, while the biggest hurdle on the city side is, has now been cleared because of the zoning change, when you're the mayor of Providence, you could do a lot of things that are very annoying. You could put in proposals. You could attempt to change zoning again. You could change tax incentive policy, things like that. You could really, at the very least, make it uncomfortable and potentially make it impossible.
Ian mentioned education, and boy, that's been a big one. We'll talk about that in our final segment. Oh. Yeah, that headache, clear for the Commissioner of Education. Your thought on the RICAS results versus MCAS?
Yeah, I mean, Dan, you and I both came to Rhode Island around the same time, about 20 years ago, and it seemed to me then there was a consensus in the business community that public education is a critical issue for the future of the state's economy. People thought it was a big deal at the time. There was this new consensus, but we've seen barely, if any, progress since then. So yet we have another wake-up call, and Commissioner Wagner said himself, the state has to make a plan and stick to it. And we haven't done that.
I think emotion is what's lacking here. Obviously, this is feigned emotion. There are coaches who believe that you go into the locker room and you hold carrots until you get performance. And then there's Bobby Knight who comes in and throws chairs and tells them the truth. I just want you to throw a chair once.
Yeah.
I just want you to throw a chair once. I want people to understand that this isn't funny, this isn't acceptable, and it's not true that our kids perform.
This isn't funny, this isn't acceptable, and it's not true that our kids can't do it. They can do it.
Be careful what you ask for. A light moment, surprising, because he's so docile, right? I mean, he's a docile character.
Very much so, yeah.
But I don't sense the state is emotional about this.
Yeah, it's not the same. I started, as a reporter and kind of came up right as the race to the top money was secured, and that's, Deb Gist and kind of a lot of the same players other than Deb Gist and Governor Kucheri who really put their might behind getting the money, and everybody kind of said, we're going to make big reforms because you wanted money. And the challenge now is you've got a situation where everybody says we really need to get together, and the Rhode Island Foundation really wants to put a group together to stay on course, but there's no incentive in terms of the money that's there to push this forward. And I think everybody says...
So you're saying we need more money?
I think money is a huge factor. And I know people say, oh, there's been plenty of new money thrown in at Rhode Island. Here's the other thing. Massachusetts, people say, okay, they stuck to it. One of the things that
they spent a lot of money. They
spent a ton of money, and the legislature didn't interfere. That's what's happened in Rhode Island.
Quick thought about 19. Do you see anything crazy going on here?
I think one of the big concerns is how a lot of people expect a recession, economic conditions will worsen. The state already faces a $200 million deficit, so tougher economic outlook.
All right, well, you know what? In 19, we'll worry about 19. But there is one lingering story we got to mention when we come back. Guys, thank you. All right, so I don't know if it's the biggest story of the year, but it certainly is the lingering story. Look at the headline. They can't find the turkey? They can't catch it. I have 12 to 18 of them in my backyard every day. I know, it's, Anita's telling me, national news. A turkey in Johnston. Was 2018 the year of the turkey? I'm at a complete loss. We'll see you tomorrow. Ken Block in here to talk about new data that he's mining. It's actually interesting, I promise. We'll see you on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Good night.